on conflicts in the Middle East. Israel, of course, as many other countries in the Middle East, is watching U.S. elections very closely. The Israelis are waiting to see the results, as it is very crucial in deciding the outcome of the war in Gaza and its aftermath. Linda Gradstein reports for VOA from Jerusalem.
Israelis are keeping a close eye on the upcoming U.S. elections, as the United States is expected to play a major role in helping to achieve a ceasefire and hostage release, and in helping to arrange a new government in Gaza. Several polls in Israel show Israeli public opinion has shifted, especially in the past year.
October 7th has mostly moved Israelis to the right. And so when they look at American politics or anywhere, they kind of see a left-right divide, and they're usually going to go to the side that they identify with more. And that side would, in this case, be Donald Trump.
More than 200,000 dual U.S.-Israeli citizens live in Israel, and many plan to vote in the U.S. election. The Jewish state has long enjoyed a special relationship with Washington, and since the start of the war against Hamas last October, the U.S. has passed legislation to send Israel $12.5 billion in military aid. Many Israelis remember former President Trump's bold actions in support of Israel during his first term in office.
People say he moved the American embassy to Jerusalem. He recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. He supported Israel through thick and thin, especially in terms of its struggle with Iran. So there is an aspect of gratitude.
Analysts say many Israelis also appreciate the support shown by President Biden since the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th, despite protests of some in his own party. Biden visited Israel just days after the Hamas attack on October 7th, passed a massive aid package, and played a key role in defending Israel against the hundreds of Iranian missiles fired at Israel in April, while making sure that the attack would not develop into a regional war. But the Biden administration's decision to withhold a portion of the U.S. arms shipments, fearing that their use in the crowded Gaza Strip would cause many civilian deaths in Gaza, caused tension with the Netanyahu government and influenced Israeli public opinion against him.
Joe Biden has given Israel a very long leash. We're more than 9 months into the war, and he has at no point said a ceasefire immediately now. He's held up some 2,000-pound bombs that were going to be used, he thought, in urban areas that he didn't want to happen, but he's otherwise kept the flow of arms fairly consistent.
While polls suggest Israelis want Trump to win the U.S. election, some Israeli analysts see a Trump victory as cause for concern.
I'm not at all convinced that Trump's overall pro-Israeli attitude and pronouncements say much about the future. He can turn on a dime.
Prime Minister Netanyahu visits Washington next week. He plans to address a joint session of Congress at the invitation of Republicans in what some see as a partisan move by Netanyahu, much like his addresses to Congress in 2011 and 2015 in the face of opposition by then President Obama and then Vice President Biden. Linda Gradstein, VOA News, Jerusalem.
VOA's Jessica Stone is still with us live from the White House. Jessica, Donald Trump's vice presidential pick, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, has outlined his support for a foreign policy that would really change Washington's approach to the Middle East and across the world as well. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, we know that J.D. Vance served 6 years as a U.S. Marine in Iraq, and he came back with a lot of skepticism on military intervention abroad by the U.S. government. He does oppose most foreign aid. He says the U.S. can't support Israel and Ukraine at the same time while making moves towards strengthening its position in East Asia. He wants to continue what began under the Obama administration, known as the pivot to Asia. And there is one exception, though, in terms of his desire to support military funding, at least, and that is Israel. He does support additional military resources to Israel to shore up alliances with Muslim Sunni nations in the area against Iran. In a speech that he gave in May about all of this, he summed up his foreign policy as this, we quote, "We want the Israelis and the Sunnis to police their own part of the world. We want the Europeans to police their own region of the world, and we want to be able to focus more on East Asia." And one analyst we spoke to at VOA says this is really a big departure from the way Biden administration has prosecuted its foreign policy. They argue that these regions are all interconnected and they all need U.S. involvement. But it is important to remember that even though J.D. Vance is now on the ticket, and much is being read into that Donald Trump will still be the person who really guides foreign policy going forward if he is elected.
And this week, the U.S. military formally ended its mission to operate a pier to bring humanitarian aid to Gaza. What's behind that decision, and what's the impact on aid delivery to Gaza now?
Yeah, you know, the U.S. government spent $230 million on that pier. It's only in the operation for about 25 days. Critics have called it pointless. They've called it a wasteful effort, a boondoggle. U.S. military counters that it's facilitated the delivery of 9 million kilos of of aid to Gaza as it neared a famine. Biden himself has said that he's disappointed that it wasn't more successful. But the military says that weather was worse than expected, that the lack of safety for humanitarian groups by Israel's increase in tempo of military operations in Gaza also impacted their operations. The deputy commander of the U.S. Central Command, which is the military region the U.S. military region that basically operates in the Middle East, he told reporters that the pier achieved a, quote, unprecedented operation, and that now plans will move about 2.3 million kilos of aid from Cyprus, which is still in waiting to be distributed, that will go into Israel via a port in the south of Israel. The commander says that approach should be more sustainable than this pier that has now been dismantled in Gaza. Susan?
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for all of those updates. VOA's Jessica Stone joining us live from the White House on this Friday morning. Jessica, thank you and have a great weekend.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.